Hi, I'm Heather, and I live in Independence, Missouri. I'm not sure if you need to know that or not. But I am 30, I think I'll be 39 years old this year, and I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for 12 years, and I also have a mom who was diagnosed with primary progressive aphasia in 2019.
And what is primary progressive aphasia?
Primary progressive aphasia is a neurocognitive disorder, and it kind of falls under the category of dementia. It's almost like a big umbrella term for dementia, and specifically, it's frontal temporal dementia. It's a different variant. There's a lot of different variants.
Okay, so you said that you're a nurse, which makes me think since you already have a medical background, does that mean that it was easy for you to figure out what was happening with your mom?
No, not at all. When the doctors first diagnosed her, they had only told me that it was expressive aphasia, which I had only heard of through stroke. So if there was damage to the brain, that would cause um, interference with communication, and then you could regain sometimes some of that speech. But with primary progressive aphasia, it's not. It's not that at all. It's actually the degeneration of the brain tissue itself. So being a nurse did not help me at all because the medical community doesn't really understand what primary progressive aphasia is. They just understand what expressive aphasia or a general aphasia that's caused by a traumatic brain injury or stroke. So this is completely different.
What the beginning was like? How did you, just as a daughter, start to see changes? What was the beginning like?
So with my mom, I noticed that she kind of omitted nouns. So she would call things a thing. Oh, that girl did that one thing. And it was kind of hard to follow her train of thought. So initially, we did think that maybe she had had like a TIA or a stroke. A TIA is like a mini stroke, but brain functionality or whatever deficits that somebody would have would come back because there's not like a kink in the hose, so to speak. Whereas a full-blown stroke, there is a kink and there's damage to that part of the brain. So when we first started with a neurologist, they recommended an MRI to see brain imaging to just rule out stroke. And then when we found out that it wasn't a stroke, I was like, well, what is it? And then that sent us down a rabbit hole of going to a psychologist and doing a neuropsychology evaluation, or a neurocog, is what they call it, a neurocog evaluation. And that test is so long and it's so hard for people. And my mom was really, really traumatized. And she said, I am never going back to that place ever again because it makes you feel stupid. Because they test a lot of different things. I think I would probably feel stupid with that test, actually. But it was just hard for her. And there was no guidance. There was no guidance as to what this actually is. I had to call back the neurologist and learn a lot of things myself, which was hard.
When did the symptoms first appear, and then when did the test happen, and then how is your mom now?
So the first time that we noticed our test was actually in 2019. That's when we had the MRI, and then when we saw the doctors who gave us the primary progressive aphasia diagnosis. So about 5 to 6 years prior, we really started to notice a change in my mom's ability to communicate. It was very, very subtle. Like I said, it was just nouns, and we just thought since she had been through a lot of stress and death in the family that it was caused by stress. But as the years progressed And when we actually got that diagnosis, her speaking ability has definitely decreased a lot. She moved in with me December of 2021. And so it's only been 6 months since that time. And it's very hard to follow her train of thought right now. If you don't have a base of what she's talking about. You don't have it's very challenging as a daughter and as a nurse, because you're always looking for that little thread of information where you're like, if I just listen long enough, I'll figure out what she's saying. And sometimes you have no idea. You have no idea.
What has been the hardest part of the FTD diagnosis journey?
So the journey has definitely been difficult trying to find information. Most of the things that I've looked at were just a quick Google search. What is primary progressive aphasia? And you kind of go down that rabbit hole of, okay, now it's frontal temporal dementia. Okay, what the heck does that mean? So it's a lot of searching in Google and watching videos. Now that we have social media, that's really great. Because there's so much more information that you can find on hashtags. There's people's stories that you can find. So it doesn't make you feel like you're alone anymore. Because as a nurse, I would reach out to the doctors that were at my hospital, to the neurologists. Anytime that I had a chance to talk to them, I would say, hey, what is this? Have you heard of it? What do we do about it? But a lot of the neurologists I talk to, even now at the hospital, are like, oh, well, it's primary progressive aphasia. It's a form of dementia. They all rope it into dementia. But there's so many facets of dementia. It is unreal. And even my experience with primary progressive versus somebody else's, there's so many different variants, and it's very, very personalized that it's hard to get information. So websites that specialize in primary progressive aphasia are very, very important. And just trying to bring awareness is really important for a caregiver, because we just don't know. We don't know. So what has been the most helpful as a caregiver is social media. Strangers have been very, very helpful. I have also documented my mom's journey on social media as well. I found out that June is National Aphasia Month, and I just decided to go all out and say, hey, you know what? People need to know about this. So sharing your journey, journaling, trying to process as much as you can, and connecting with other people who have similar things really helps, because just sharing on social media, I actually found a nurse that I didn't even know through a friend, and her mom actually has the behavioral variant of frontal temporal dementia. So we've been able to connect on so many different levels and be able to support each other, because she's going to move into caregiving and bringing her mom to live with her. She doesn't have any kids, but it is so incredibly hard, and you just can't prepare for any of it, unfortunately.
From perspective of today, what do you wish you knew now when your loved one was diagnosed then?
So what I wish I knew, and this is also kind of going into my nurse's perspective as well, is get your paperwork in order. Talk to an elder care lawyer. Talk to your loved ones now, like seriously now, like anyone really, to find out what their wishes are when they're able to communicate, getting that durable power of attorney, that financial power of attorney. Understand how big of a responsibility that it is, because when somebody loses their ability to communicate, you have to become an advocate for them. And it's a lot of weight to put on your shoulders. But when something happens, when something huge happens medically, when they become unstable, if you have to put them in a nursing home, it's going to be a lot harder if you don't have that information. And I don't think people understand that because they don't want to talk about death. They don't want to talk about nursing homes. They don't want to talk about, a lot of those issues. But every single time you bring that up, it's going to be a lot better for you. And just, yeah, I don't even know where to go with that. It's just hard.
Okay, you actually brought forward a question from Bryce. I believe he must be a follower of your Instagram. And so his question, he has a couple questions here. I'll ask the first one. Is FTD like other neurological disorders like dementia, Parkinson's, stroke, Alzheimer's?
So yes, it is similar, but also not similar. Dementia is, like I said, an umbrella term. So things like Alzheimer's and the classic dementias, they affect your memory. So you're going to forget how to do things. You're going to forget the people that you love, names, all kinds of different things. You're going to forget how to do self-care. With primary progressive aphasia, your memories are still intact. So it's almost like a locked-in syndrome where you cannot communicate. You lose the meaning of words. So it's all about incoming, outgoing information, written, spoken language. And there's just this vast barrier that nobody really understands. Because if you look at my mom, if my mom went to a hospital right now, they would say, oh, she's so confused. It doesn't matter. We don't need to teach her anything. We don't even need to try because, oh, she has dementia. And that's actually not the case at all. She knows exactly what she's talking about. She gets scared and she understands to some degree. But when you ask her questions, what's your name? Where are you at? Like those basic questions that they will ask you in the hospital to base orientation status, she can't answer any of them. But if you ask her about a situation and you know about the situation, she will tell you certain things and you can connect. But you have to be extremely in tune with that person and know the background situation, because otherwise, like, you just don't understand at all. And it's sad because if people don't have an advocate for them, they get lost.
Wow. Okay. So you're the first person I've spoken with who is the caregiver of a family member with primary progressive aphasia, and that's the most detailed description I've heard. And that sounds really, really rough. Wow.
Can I also add something with that too? So kind of going along with the question that you had before, is primary progressive aphasia like other dementias? And I will say that from the research that I've done, when you're at the end stages of this primary progressive form, it will mimic other types of dementias. Your memory will start to go. And I don't know at what point that starts to happen, but I have noticed certain memory issues with my mom because, I have to prompt her to take showers and how to use shampoo and ask her about a fork. I say, hey, can you get me 2 forks or, 2 plates while we're making dinner? And that word plate, she goes, plate? Like she hasn't heard the word before. Sometimes she'll grab a plate, sometimes she'll grab a fork. And even though I have the word labeled like in our drawers, it's like it's like I'm speaking a foreign language. And it's so bizarre. Like, because sometimes she understands and sometimes she doesn't, and there's no rhyme or reason for any of it. So it is wild. It is wild. It's a wild ride.
Okay, the last question from Bryce is to to your knowledge, what is the main cause of FTD, primary progressive aphasia?
So they don't really know. There are genetic there's genetic portions of frontal temporal dementia that I know of, but the research that I've done with primary progressive, I think, to the best of my knowledge, 90% of the cases of primary progressive are not genetic. And they don't really know why, but they do know that the part of the brain, which is the frontal and the temporal, that's the portion of the brain that's responsible for communication. And that part of the brain atrophies or dies. That brain tissue gets smaller and shrinks. But they don't know why. I think it might have been, whenever I've read before, it's some kind of abnormal protein. But they don't even know how to measure that until after somebody dies and they do a brain autopsy, as far as I know. So when I got the neurocognitive evaluation, the doctor was very forthcoming and said, hey, by the way, her ability, like her, oh gosh, I can't think of the word right now, like her reaction time. Her reaction time is a lot slower than it should be. So she said eventually you need to take the keys away and she can't drive. So she had come to my house a few times. She lived in an apartment probably about 10 minutes away from where I currently live. So I didn't notice a problem because she made it to my house. But whenever I sat in and actually drove with her, I just noticed that there was a lot of weird things that were happening. She didn't know, like she forgot how to turn her turn signals on. And then if her wiper blades were on, she didn't know how to turn them off. She started asking questions about how to fill up her own gas tank. And she didn't know the code on her credit card. So I was just like, this is not safe. And I actually had to ride with her. So I would definitely recommend, if you ever have any questions about, your loved one's ability to drive and their understanding, is to ride along with them. Because you will never, ever understand. The person that you love will never, ever tell you, hey, I'm having problems. So thankfully, in a weird way, the pandemic helped shift that for us because she wasn't able to go anywhere. For a really long time, she wasn't able to drive because we had the stay-at-home order. So that kind of helped us in a way. And taking her keys away, she didn't really understand, I don't think. I just kind of took them one day. She didn't ask about them. She just knows that she doesn't have a car. And when she rides with me, sometimes we'll be at the stoplight and she'll say, go, go. And I said, and that's why I don't allow you to drive, because there's a red light. So I don't know. It's hard when you have to become the parent, if that makes any sense, in a way, because you have to advocate for them, and when their judgment goes, you have to be that person.
5 years ago or so, your mom was still completely conversational, driving, had a full life and everything, and now it's 5 years later. What's her current level of awareness and ability to communicate? Like, would I notice if I visited your house that something was going on?
Yes, you would definitely notice. When you have a conversation with my mom, she wants to have a conversation with people, but when she talks, you can't understand what she's saying. It's a bunch of gibberish. In medical terms, it's called word salad. So it would just be a bunch of random words. She said this, and yeah, oh, and pink and purple, and you're like, I'm not sure what that means. Or, well, she said this. Okay, well, what did she say? And sometimes when she tries to say a sentence, she'll say, well, she said, And then she stops. And you're like, she says what? And so if you repeat what she says verbatim, she gets upset because it doesn't make sense to her. And so even trying to figure out what she's trying to say, it's so hard. And you almost kind of have to direct with humor or with music. She's very, very in tune with her emotions. So me being aware of my own, that's a big trick for a caregiver, is always be aware of your emotions, your non-spoken language, body communication, all that, because they will pick up on that. And it's very interesting how in tune with her emotions, because music, you always have to find what the individual person likes. Dementia is a very, very personalized disease, because there's things that work for me that don't work for other people who are caregiving. So it's finding those nuances.
Okay, I have a two-part question for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, how informed are most GPs or others in the medical community about FTD? And I know we kind of touched on that before, but and again, this is just your general impression. So when they're confronted with a patient presenting with FTD symptoms, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are they to know what it is that they're looking at?
General practitioners, they don't really know. They don't understand. They get their information from a psychologist most of the time, or a neurologist. And even the neurologist, whenever you go to see them, they have a better understanding, but they almost, I personally feel that they also rope those, I don't know, those specific types of diseases into one. Because honestly, from a healthcare perspective, it doesn't change the course of treatment. Dementia is dementia, and there is no cure for dementia, but they can always use speech therapy and physical and occupational therapy, but it doesn't change the course. And so from their perspective, it doesn't matter what type of frontal temporal dementia that you have. It doesn't matter if you have Alzheimer's. It doesn't matter what type of dementia you have. They're all the same.
Okay, so given that, here's part 2 of the question. If someone's watching this video and they're like, oh my gosh, I think this is happening to my husband, my mother, my father, what advice would you give to someone then if they suspect that FTD is happening to someone? So they're watching this, they're thinking, okay, my GP might not be much help, so what do I do?
So if you think that your loved one has certain symptoms, losing their ability to speak, or something just doesn't seem right, I would tell them, go see your doctor, explain what's happening, ask for a neurologist. That way they can rule out stroke or head trauma. I actually wanted to mention something in a different question regarding that head trauma too, that my husband brought up. But getting tested, getting a neurocognitive evaluation, even though it's not a very fun thing, at least you have a baseline to go off of. You have a baseline MRI. That way, years down the road, I think they say like 2 to 3 years, you can get another test and you can see what their brain was like then and what their brain is like now. You can see like if there's any degeneration or loss of tissue. That will help.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
When you sign up for the registry, it doesn't help the person that actually has primary progressive aphasia, but it does help the future generations, I guess you could say. And so I feel like that's a very important component, because we're always setting these things up for our future generations. And so if we can find out information about how to detect better, how to prevent things better, I feel like that is a great source. So I personally did sign up for it. I don't know, where that will go, just because my life is a little strange and busy right now, just being at a hospital and then taking care of my mom. But I would love to be a part of research. I'd love to be a part of anything that would help future generations.
Okay. All right. Let me jump into a little bit more about your day-to-day experience, Heather, because my main focus with this is to help caregivers know that they're not, the only ones in the world doing this tough job. Because that's one thing that doesn't really change regardless of what kind of dementia it is. It's all so difficult. So can you share a little bit about what your day-to-day life is like as a caregiver?
Yes. So Monday through Friday, I don't work. On Saturdays and Sundays, I do at the hospital every Saturday and Sunday. So my situation's a little bit different, and so I'm home with my mom Monday through Friday. Normally, it's not. I can kind of direct her. I know when she kind of gets up, but with any type of dementia, they have sleep issues. I don't know what that is all about, but no matter what I do, she's up at the crack of dawn. So depending on what time I get up, she can be very angry because she doesn't understand why I'm not up, why there are people not up, to help her. And she almost waits for other people to get breakfast or do things that she needs, and then she becomes very angry and resentful. But when I say that, my mom's not an angry person, so she'll just give you the silent treatment. Whereas other family members are very verbal when it comes to anger. I've taken care of a lot of dementia patients, and it's very interesting how they react to certain things. But if I'm talking on the phone, if I am doing anything with work, I have to almost make her busy. And if she's not in the same room with me, she'll peer around the corner, try to figure out who I'm talking to. And she does get very paranoid because her perception of anything that anybody is doing is about her. So it's a very interesting world that she lives in. So you're taking care of all aspects, breakfast, lunch, dinner, trying to figure out what she needs. If she's getting antsy, if she's getting angry, you have to, I usually take her for a walk around the block just to kind of help her communicate better. Because when we take a walk, for whatever reason, she talks more. But it's weird because when my mom was young, or when I was younger and my mom was younger, she would always talk on the phone. Like, she's a very verbal person. So she still is. That part hasn't changed, but it's just hard to understand what she's saying now.
So it sounds like it's definitely a full-time job. How much of your how much of your 7-day week would you say this is on your mind, the care for your mother as well? I mean, I know you're married. You also have children, young children. So I guess, my question is, how does this all work for you while balancing work and kids and family?
So balance, there is no balance. To be completely honest, there is no balance. Somebody's always getting the short end of the stick. So something that I would really preface to caregivers is trying to figure out how to, number one, take care of yourself. And it's hard. How to take care of your kids, how to connect, how to give people the time that they need when they need it. Because I'm actually I don't know how to do it. Because when I take care of my mom's like in my face all the time. Like, she wants to always be around me. I'm her person. And so trying to set the boundary with her, because she just doesn't understand, is very hard. And then that almost makes my 8-year-old kind of withdraw a little bit. And he loves helping. Like, he does a great job. But he's a very busy kid as well. And then my husband, it's like trying to accommodate all of these different types of situations. Who gets up at what time? Because my husband has a different schedule than I do. So trying to incorporate that. When can I see my husband? When can I have alone time with him? When can I have alone time with my 8-year-old? Could we do anything by ourselves? Should I leave my mom home? Like, there's so many facets that I don't know how to do it sometimes. But you just have to keep that perspective of one foot in front of the other. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're just going to get through it. And just, telling everyone, hey, I love you. I just don't have time for that right now. Hold on. Now let me give you 5 minutes of my time, my undivided attention. But it's so incredibly hard because you give so much that it's hard to have anything left at the end of the day. So finding a way to recharge any way that you can is so helpful. One thing that I found personally is when I take my mom for a walk, I'm terrified of not being able to understand what she's saying because I'm like, I know that there's like one part, if I just like pay attention really, really closely, I can figure out what she's saying. But most of the time I can't. So if I have like a music, like instrumental music playing in one like earbud, and then I have this ear towards her whenever she's talking, it helps me calm down. Because when you have a lot of stress in your life, your nervous system fires up, and it's like almost like in Encanto whenever Luisa's eye is twitching. You're like, sure, I'm fine, I'm good, but you're like, I'm not really good. So finding those ways to kind of help calm your nervous system is very, very important.
How is your situation being perceived from outside family members?
That's a very, very interesting question. And I actually thought about that the other day, because if somebody is diagnosed with cancer, people come out of the woodwork. Hey, do you need anything? Hey, I'll give you, food, whatever you need, blah, blah, blah. Not so much with primary progressive aphasia or dementias. So my mom had 5 brothers and sisters. 2 of them passed away, so she's got, I think, 2 left, and like her included. So one of her sisters lives kind of farther away, and the other one is very supportive, but it's hard to talk on the phone with her because you don't know what she's saying, and so people get very frustrated. I do have an older sister. She hasn't really. She's always been doing something other. She works for the military, so she's very busy with that. So she's supported me personally in other ways. She paid for the lawyer and, just try to do things that she can do while she's not actually here. But as far as family support, with her family, we don't really have that much. And it's not to say that I'm alone, but it's hard. It's hard to ask for help. Hey, can you watch my mom? Because you're putting an incredible amount of pressure on somebody that has no idea what they're even doing in the first place. So my husband will sometimes ask and say, well, my mother-in-law can watch your mom. It's fine. Like, we can go on a trip. We can do these certain things. Why do we have to bring her along? So in certain respects, he's very resentful of that. But it's hard for me to give up control because I don't trust people. I don't trust the fact that if I leave her home alone, that somebody's going to care for her. Because when I have before, they're like, oh, well, she's an adult. She knows what she wants to eat. It's fine. No big deal. She can have shredded potatoes and cheese and ketchup, and she can put whatever she wants in there. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. You just can't do that. And so you have to make sure that the person that's watching is competent enough.
Have you considered adult daycare?
Yes, I have considered adult daycare. I took her to a local place. It was assisted living, and they had the daycare, which I didn't even know that existed. So that was really great. One of my nurse friends told me about the daycares, and so because I used her name, we were able to get in. So you got to have connections, I guess, especially with the pandemic. So we did try. We did try to get her there. At first, we started 2 days a week, and then they offered 5 days a week for almost the same amount of pay. So they are very expensive. They are private paid. Insurance does not pay for them. So it was running us about $800 a month, I believe, $880 probably for 5 days a week. And we could come and go anytime that we wanted, from about 9 o'clock in the morning to about 5 o'clock in the evening. It included breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It included activities. And at first we were going 2 days a week. But because my mom has this very strange type of dementia, she knows that she doesn't want to be there. She says that it's for mentally challenged people. She wants to help these people, and she doesn't understand that it's a locked community, and she wants to leave. There's been very many times where I've actually had to come and get her because she gets very angry, and she's like, I don't know where my daughter is, and I need to find her. I need to go. Let me out. So that's kind of where we're at right now, especially this month, because she was going, we were taking her every day, and my kid was in school. So that was really nice to be able to breathe. But now it's just so weird because we have a calendar on our refrigerator, and she'll say, oh yeah, I want to do that. Hey, what's this day? I want to do that. I'm like, okay, do you want to go? And she's like, yeah. So then we'll drive. And then all of a sudden, as soon as we get there, she tenses up and she's like, what are you doing? I told you I don't want to be here. I don't understand why you want me to go to this place. And not in those words, but you can kind of tell. And it's heartbreaking because that place is amazing. The people are amazing. They do activities. They do, my mom loves to dance and she loves music. And so every Thursday they would do music and she would get up and dance, and she's almost like the superstar of that daycare because everybody loves her. She does bring the joy, but she just doesn't want to be there. So it's so challenging to balance what she needs, because she needs to be around people. I need her to be around people. But you can't force somebody there. And the daycare places, they will kick you out. If you try to leave, you're called an elopement risk. And she's not trying to leave that facility. She's like, I don't understand why I cannot go in and out as I please. So people just think that she's confused, and she's not. She knows what she wants to do. So I don't think I ever really told him anything other than that it was difficult for Grandma. He is like a sponge. He absorbs every single thing that I do, how I talk to her, how I accommodate. And sometimes when I leave them alone, it's so beautiful to watch. He's 8, but he's very patient. Hey, Grandma. He loves to make smoothies. Hey, Grandma, come over here. Hey, press this button. No, not that. Press this button. And so he's very, very kind and very patient with her. However, he is 8, so he does run around. He is loud, and he does disturb her quite a bit. He goes into her room, and she has these owls. So she loves tchotchkes. So it's almost like you're walking into Hobby Lobby. We tried to make her room kind of like her old apartment. And she just has these really pretty, beautiful things. And for whatever reason, he loves these owls. And so he will torment her, like moving things around and just being himself. And it's so hard to have to discipline him and tell him not to be in her room, not to disturb her, not to do things with her, because she's so bothered by just anything that he does. And it's heartbreaking because I know she loves being around him. I know that relationship is hard, and it's hard to help that as a parent, because you're like, dang, like, I want you guys to be good together, but she doesn't want anybody else to be around except for me sometimes. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like, if it's it, and I've said it a couple times before, and sometimes I regret it, but it's like, if I have a choice between my son and you, it's going to be my son. So if you're bothered by it, there are other places that we can take you that you're not going to like, and I'm trying to avoid that. But if it becomes a problem, like, I know in the back of my mind that I have to make that decision, and that's a very hard thing to do. But you always have to be forward thinking, and you always have to plan for the future, as hard as it is.
Thanks, Heather. That's it reminds me of when my mom was totally fine with the kids being at the house, because one came back from college, and my other son, he was in New York City, and all the bars that he worked at closed, so he had nowhere to go and no income. So for a while we were all okay together. And then I still remember that one day when everything switched, when all of a sudden Mom thought she was whispering when she said, "I don't like them. I don't want them in my room anymore. Keep them away from me." And then I had to go tell my kids, who are pretty much adults, well, not pretty much, they're like 23 and 18 at the time, but I had to tell them, Grandma doesn't want you in there, and it's not what Grandma would say, but this is who we have here now and what we have to do. And, that was really challenging for them, big time. So, yeah, it's hard. Yeah, even when they're older, it's still hard to tell them that that's not, the situation's messed up. Okay, so Heather, is there anything that you feel like we should cover? Anything you thought, I want to make sure I say this?
Let me look here. I'm just trying. I think one of the things that I did not mention too before was that my mom, she was actually visiting my sister who used to live in Florida. She was taking care of her dogs, and she ended up calling me one night and said that she fell, like, in the street. And so initially, like, whenever I had thought about this whole diagnosis, I was like, oh, like, did she have like a traumatic brain injury type thing? Because she said when she called, she said, "Oh, it's not that bad." And I said, "Okay, well, can you take a picture of your face?" And she had a black eye and like a scrape. So I always thought, like, wow, like, could that have been the trigger for all of this? Could it have been a traumatic brain injury? But learning about things now, like, it's weird how you connect certain things. And then from my perspective too, when I don't sleep enough, I start not being able to formulate sentences, and like I'll miss words here and there. And so it's always in the back of your mind, like, am I going to have this disease too?
Yeah.
And then
always, like every day, I have that concern. It's awful. Yes. Sorry, I just had to jump in and agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, watching my mom go through this, it's like those symptoms were so subtle. And it could have been roped into any different type of stress and anxiety and not being able to sleep. And you just kind of wonder, okay, well, what do I now have to think of? Because I don't want to put my child in this situation at all. Like, I do not want him to even think about that's what he has to do. Because I guess I'm segueing, or not, I don't even know how to say it. I'm leading into what I really wanted to say, because we just moved into this house. Like we just moved into this house 3 years ago, when I didn't even tell my mom that we were moving or that we were even looking for a house, because I didn't want her to live with me. That was never my plan. And it was hard because, my mom's always been that person. A little bit of back history. My dad was actually involved in a really bad car accident when I was 8. She took care of him. She was, I think, in her 40s. She took care of him for 4 years, and he died when I was 12. So my child is now 8. And thinking about all the things that she personally went through that whole trauma, and now me taking care of her now, like I've always been taking care of her since I was 15 and a half. I paid some bills because my dad wasn't around, and my sister was 4 years older, and she went off to college. So through this whole journey, I've really tried to I guess I'm struggling with all my emotions, because there's resentment, there's anger, there's happiness, there's, she's my mom. But also I'm having to separate myself from that. Like, I don't call her mom anymore. I call her Joe, because that's my way of processing. So throughout this whole journey, it's been like this huge wave, and you don't even know where her story begins or ends and my story begins, because it's all intermingled. And it never was my plan, but I had to raise necessity and seek clarity and really work on myself internally and say, hey, you know what? Like, this is what I have to do, because nobody else is going to do it, and nobody else understands her better than I do, and I have to be that advocate for her. But it's extremely challenging. There is no way to prepare for it. No matter how many books you read, no matter how many, support systems that you have, it's devastating. And it makes me so mad sometimes, because I'm 39 and I have an 8-year-old, and I have to deal with this. And this is like the prime of my life, and I don't feel like I should be doing this. And I want to be able to enjoy my life. And sometimes you can't, because you have to think about all these other things, and you have to be that pillar of strength for everybody. And it's so hard. And I think that's what people don't see with this caregiver role, is that the anger and the frustration. And it's not even their fault, but being aware of your own emotions, and being able to articulate things and share them in a way that is real, that is raw, and also provide dignity for the person that you're caring for is so incredibly important. And there are beautiful parts to caregiving. There are absolutely beautiful parts, but there are horrors and sleepless nights and all kinds of things. And so that's why I say, caregiving is really about riding the waves, because those are all types of waves. And it's just this continuous motion. So that's the best way I can describe things.
Well, Heather, that's a really powerful way to describe it. That's, that's exactly what it's like. Yeah, Heather, I feel like that last bit you shared is, if they just watch that last response that'll help a lot of caregivers, I feel like. Because I mean, that's just really what I'm trying to get across. It's not like I have a goal for the videos, but I'm just trying to get into like the meat and potatoes of what this experience is really like, so the caregivers feel understood. And so I really appreciate you just being so, open and honest about that, because I think that just will help a lot. So
yeah. I really did want to share that, because a lot of the things that you see, they're like, oh yeah, I'm having this beautiful day with my mom and it's great. And I'm like, where's the times that you've cried? Where's the times that you have like said, I am going to lose it. I'm going to choke somebody if I'm not careful. And that's my experience through being a nurse too, because, people don't get it. They really don't get how incredibly hard this job is. And I'm a caregiver by nature. Like, I've always been that type of person, and it's hard for me.